Mike here, and I'll be discussing the P-39 N-0 today, Russian premium aircraft. This aircraft was first unveiled at Wright Field Airport in 1939. It was a prototype XP-39, and it already carried its feature armament of one 37mm cannon mounted in the nose, with another four 50 caliber machine guns mounted in the wings. It was a new design, and it surprised everybody very much. Close to 5,000 P-39s were sent to the Soviet Union, mainly for ground attack, but contrary to popular belief, that's not what they were used for. The 37mm cannon was very effective, but it did have some downsides. It had a slow rate of fire, and it did have a very bad trajectory, as the muzzle velocity was not nearly as good as the Yak-9T muzzle velocity, and but it did make up for that with 50 cals. And the Russian one has 6 machine guns, 4 7mm rifle caliber machine guns, and 2 50 cals. This plane does drop performance after 20,000 feet of altitude, but that does not stop it from being a great plane in game. Russia had much more success with this airplane than the US ever did. They received, as I told you, 4,500 of them, almost half, and they used them for air-to-air combat. It was designed for the Russians, when it was given to the Russians, to be just a ground attack airplane for tanks, for medium tanks, for artillery, with a 37mm cannon, but the Russians decided to use it for air-to-air combat, and it actually worked out very well for them. The Russians praised its low altitude speed and maneuverability, excellent structural integrity, and heavy armament. It should be noted that difficulties with the 37mm cannon and fume infiltration reported by Western flyers were not experienced by the Russian counterparts. From 1943 till the end of the war, the so-called Iron Dog enjoyed much success in the hands of its Russian masters. In the years since World War II, a number of myths have emerged that now are accepted as historical fact. Today, it is believed that the P-39 could not have been a competitive fighter. However, Soviet fighters regularly mixed it up and prevailed against German fighters. Aerial warfare over the Eastern Front was particularly suited to the Air Cobra. There was no long-range, high-level strategic bombing, only tactical bombing, and intermediate and low altitudes. On this battlefield, the P-39 matched and in some areas surpassed early and mid-war Bf-109s, and it had no trouble dispatching Stukas, or twin-engine bombers. 5 out of the 10 highest-scoring Soviet aces locked the majority of their kills in P-39s. In fact, P-39 jockeys filled the number 2, 3, and 4 spots. Alexander Pokrushkin, Alexander Gulaev, and Grigory Rechkalov. Well, these are three famous Russian Aces in the P-39. Another main misconception about the P-39 is that it was an effective tank buster. In early August of 1944, while flying over a tank battle in Poland, Alexander Pokrushkin told the T-34 unit commander, "Our cannons will not penetrate tank armor." The Colt M4 37mm cannon had a muzzle velocity of only 600 meters per second, effectively making it ineffective against tanks, and a low rating of 1.4 kilograms steel on target per second. Well, that's a mass kilograms per second of burst mass. Theoretically, it could only penetrate the armor of early Panzer tanks, but only the top of the hull and turret. By comparison, the N-37 37mm cannon had a muzzle velocity of 900 meters per second and a steel on target rating of 3.06 kilograms, enough to get through all but the Tiger side of the armor, Tiger side or front armor. Also, instead of the M80 AP rounds, armor-piercing rounds, that were required, the US shipped the Soviets M54 high-explosive shells, which were ineffective against tanks. Most of you know, if you play World of Tanks, high-explosive rounds don't have enough penetration don't have as much penetration as, say, for example, armor-piercing rounds, but they have more explosives, and if it does get in past the armor, it causes much more damage to the tank. And because the Americans shipped him M54 high explosive shells, the Russians did not use it for tank destroying purposes on the Eastern Front. The P-39 air cobra was a plane of contradictions, loathed by the Western Allies but loved by the Russians. It found home in the skies above the Soviet Union. Outside of that, however, historians generally accept false information about its performance. This is probably due to the fact that of the language barrier, Soviet secrecy, and perhaps because it is hard to imagine that the Russians could use the fighter successfully and we could not. You know, classic stereotypes. You know, every website I visit, every video I watch, American videos, everyone's saying this P-39 was a ground attack aircraft, not giving the Russians any credit over what they used it for. Now that boring history class is over, let's talk about how the aircraft performs in game. I've flown the P-39, the American version, and it was my favorite American airplane until I got to the the regular P-38, not the premium one. Those 30 rounds, it might not sound like much, but since the cannon doesn't fire as fast as the Yak-9T, not even close, you can save that ammo and kill so many airplanes. I mean, if you can make every single round count, you can kill 30 enemies, theoretically. But usually it takes 1, 2, 3, 4 shots to kill an enemy. With those kind of numbers, you can kill maybe 7, 10 airplanes, and that's just without any 50 cal ammo. That's just 37mm cannons. Now, if you add the 50 cals to the 37mm, you get much more firepower. If you miss with your 37mm, you get hits with your 50 cals, unless you're just that bad and you can't hit it. This is very effective. Against low-tier airplanes, 50 cals do a lot of damage, especially against Japanese airplanes. If you put tracer rounds or incendiary rounds, those Japanese planes will light up like firewood covered in gasoline. So, I mean, if you're going to go for the Russian one, go for it. A good reward with good ammo, good speed, good turning, good characteristics for low-level flight. Go for it. Great airplane.